Previously on Reading in Church and Other Distractions.
These are some hard verses, though.
They inspired your puppets. Your puppet inspired Patches and Stumpy come from here.
Right. I have a video called Patches and Stumpy, who are two lesser-known disciples of Jesus, who...
You really focus on those lesser-known disciples. Yeah, that's a theme for you, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's not just the 12. Patches and Stumpy were very zealous, but not very knowledgeable, and one of them has an eye patch, and one of them has a stump, and Jesus is teaching this, and then they come up and with their patch and their stump, and they say, Jesus, but we've done all this. What more do we lack? And Jesus says, go and learn what hyperbole means, then come and follow me.
Right.
And they look at each other and laugh and say, lessons learned. It's dark.
I do love that video, I'm not going to lie.
I still show that one.
One of
I
my
don't show
favorites.
that one. I don't show that. I should show that. I got to fix the audio on that one.
That's one of my favorites.
And then Talk Like a Pirate Day came around. I realized, hey, these guys are pirates. One of them has a stump.
And one of them has an eye
They put a
patch.
little hook in Stumpy's stump and an eye patch.
You know how many years we went to school for this? That's the thing we need to think about here.
I know. I posted that once on Facebook. I said, every now and then I think about all the years I spent in graduate school, and sometimes I wonder if it's really worth it. Then I realize I can make videos like this and feel better about life. Life doesn't seem so scary.
It's not as sad. Well,
I get hundreds of hits every year on Talk Like a Pirate Day. I should put a link to the podcast there.
Oh, that's amazing.
Welcome to Reading in Church and Other Distractions with Rob and Mike.
Welcome back to the podcast. I am Robert Wallace.
I'm Michael McKeever.
And we hope that your week has gone well. I was looking at the scriptures this week, Mike, and we have the scriptures everyone has been hoping for. We have Leviticus and more Psalm 1. I mean, people can't get enough Leviticus everywhere I go. Dr. Wallace, can you tell me more about
Leviticus 19 is kind of the heart.
It's actually a very good book. And my grandfather used to say it was the book you read right before you went to sleep, so you had nothing on your mind.
Well, the book. But for the book, the chapter is great.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is. So Leviticus, Psalm 119, more of that, more celebration of Torah. And then you get some good stuff. You get 1 Corinthians.
I think it goes well. I think Matthew goes well. Maybe I'll see how 1 Corinthians goes, although I have a suspicion they're just working through 1 Corinthians.
I think they are. I think it's a sort of narrative reading of 1 Corinthians.
Which is okay.
At this point.
So, it helps me.
That is fine.
Hey, what's this fourth wall doing here? I was editing or listening to a podcast a while ago, and you were asking me, do I like the weather? How am I doing with the weather here? And
yes,
this is the kind of weather I like now.
Oh yeah,
40s,
nice spring weather
50s. No, this is like winter where I come from. Misty, gray.
Northern California?
40s,
is that what this is?
50s, middle California.
This is August in California.
Yeah. Well, no. This is like... No, it's like winter. Sometimes both weeks of winter are like this.
Yeah, really? When we were in Texas, I was in the bathroom and I missed winter completely one day. It was really sad.
Well,
it was on a Tuesday when you're...
That's like spring here.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
It's raining and then it's 90 and mosquitoes. Right. So.
I don't complain that much about the weather, I guess, because growing up in Indiana, it's almost the same weather.
Goodness. Oh,
my goodness. It's the same weather.
Wow.
So, and Detroit, I was born in Detroit, so I lived there 9 years, and blizzard of 78 there. So
that's that gritty urban vibe I'm getting.
That's
what that is.
That's if you hear the street coming out, that's certainly me.
So street.
Yeah, that's what everyone's been saying about this podcast.
It's
just so street.
Wow.
Those guys, they're so down with the kids today.
And I haven't seen you in a while. You've been on sabbatical.
I am.
So
yeah, it's been
good
nice
to see you here. Surprised you came in your bathrobe and unshaven. And...
Well, it's funny because there was a podcast that posted just a week ago, so there is no.
I know.
There's no natural break for our.
I don't see any fourth
vast
wall.
audience, but yes, we have taken a few weeks before we've gotten back. So if we seem rusty, that's probably what it is. Or if we seem fresh,
that's ready. Yeah.
or new, and
let us know.
Awesome.
We'll go with that.
Absolutely. You could certainly send us a message on the webpage, right?
Yeah.
You could.
I would say don't walk around in your bathrobe and talk about binge watching Netflix. I don't think that was in your proposal.
That's not the proposal for sabbatical. So yeah, we just went out on sabbatical, and you called me 5 times my first official day on sabbatical.
You about wrapping this up?
So that's the danger there.
That's true.
So
needy.
It's like, and nobody knew what they were doing. I had someone else needed a file converted.
I just got this red phone on my desk. It goes directly to your home.
In spite of that, I'm getting things accomplished. So that's
I hear that. It's great.
Nice thing.
Looking forward to a book coming out.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, one day you have to talk about that book.
I will. Yeah, I'll have to do that. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Great.
Well, let us look at this exciting, action-packed passage in Leviticus.
Oh, excellent.
Leviticus 19.
19. Ooh, do I have the right verses? 1 to 2 and 9 to 18.
You do.
Yeah. Because I printed off yours. So hopefully that's what it's on the
I believe that's right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel, and say to them, You shall be holy, for I, the Lord, your God, am holy. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not strip your vineyard bare, and gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the alien. I am the Lord your God. You shall not steal. You shall not deal falsely, and you shall not lie to one another. And you shall not swear falsely by my name, profaning the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not defraud your neighbor. You shall not steal. You shall not keep for yourself the wages of a laborer until morning. You shall not revile the deaf or put a stumbling block before the blind. You shall fear your God. I am the Lord. You shall not render an unjust judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great. With justice you shall judge your neighbor. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not profit by the blood of your neighbor. I am the Lord." I'm trying to think of different ways to say that.
Yeah. I am the Lord.
I am the
Lord.
You shall not hate in your heart any one of your kin. You shall reprove your neighbor, or you will incur guilt yourself. You shall not take revenge or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord.
Yes.
All right.
See, this is better than people give it credit for.
It is.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
So do you have a fake question to ask, or maybe even a real question to ask? Or
I think I'm really close to this because I'm not, in fact, stripping my vineyards bare. And
well, that's good news.
The corners of my field I am not gleaning. So it's like,
right.
And this is an exhaustive list. So I'm actually compiling a list of things that I get a pass on. So I'm glad there's a lot of things aren't on this exhaustive list on how you're supposed to live.
Yeah, right. Well, okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah. Other questions? Anyone else?
One of the things I think that's important to remember about Leviticus is that everything that happens pretty much from Exodus, 20 all the way into Numbers happens at Sinai.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is, 2 chapters of standing there at Sinai, listening to this word. And anytime you see, I am the Lord, or I am Yahweh, that is how he opens the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, right? I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So all of these commands are rested within who God is, and in many ways within that Sinai revelation. This is part of that Sinai revelation as you get here. One thing I think is important.
Were the commandments just the table of contents for the rest of
the table of contents?
Yeah, it's like the bullet points. Here's the points. Here's the topics I'm going to touch on.
It probably, the bit nice broad character revealing kind of. Well, and I think that's part of the notion that we have here. Leviticus is not about how you earn your holiness. It is that you are holy because God has made you holy, and this is how you maintain that. You can you can soil your holiness if you don't do what God asks.
Yeah.
But God is holy. God has made you holy by grace, as God is wont to do. And now you need to maintain that level of holiness. And so all the 10 Commandments, obviously allusions you hear, steal and swearing falsely and defrauding your neighbor. I mean, all of that is that call back to the 10 Commandments.
A lot of these are the second half of the 10 Commandments.
Exactly.
Right?
And that relationship to each other.
Yeah.
Right. But all of this, I think, is fascinating, sits within the character of God. I am the Lord, so you don't swear falsely. I am the Lord, so you don't keep your So the way in which we treat neighbor is the reflection of the way in which we love God, as it is
and it
always.
Pairs perfectly with the portion of the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
We're at.
Right.
Yeah. It's all from God's character.
Right. Well, and, when asked what the greatest commandment is, Jesus quotes Leviticus, right? He quotes 19:18.
You think you're smarter than Jesus?
Yeah, you think you're smarter than Jesus, do you?
Yeah.
Well, and
it's
of
in
course,
Leviticus. The heart of the law is in Leviticus.
But then, of course, Jesus, messes up the curve, because at least in Leviticus, it does seem he's talking about your literal neighbor. They are camping in the wilderness next to people. And the way in which you treat your neighbor is desperately going to affect you. So Jesus then, who's my neighbor?
There's that question.
Thanks, God. Thanks. Mm-hmm. I was doing fine, Jesus, till you decided to make everyone my neighbor. But no, you don't defraud your neighbor. You don't. And all of these things are resting in the character of God. And his God, he is a God who cares for the poor, who cares for the deaf, who cares for the blind, who cares for the alien, who doesn't have any, here's how you provide for that person. This is all coming out of holiness of God, and therefore you need to show it. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard not to get excited about this.
And included in is stuff like, it may not be easy to live with your neighbor. Like, there are going to be occasions when you want to bear a grudge.
Or slander.
And vengeance.
Right.
Okay? It's not easy. This isn't just Mr. Rogers coming in and, asking to be your neighbor.
Yeah. And you don't get to take all that, and I don't even know how else to say this, but you don't get to take all that you're due, if you will. I mean, you have a responsibility in your land. Yeah, that's your crop, right? You planted that crop, you weeded that crop, you watered that crop.
Yeah.
But you have a responsibility to allow the people who didn't have that to take from your crop that you own, if you will.
What's
you have a responsibility to the neighbor in all of this, which I think is important. I mean, because we would never. I mean, you never think of it that way. Yeah. Right? This is my person, my profit. Yes. I did this. I did this. And no,
I'm trying to think of examples. There's one who lives in 21st century America where I could have heard that a different perspective on that. Let's see.
there are, yes, that's true. There are competing visions for that.
Yes, there are.
But the Bible says that no, you don't you don't take the last grape. You don't take the edge of even though you did plant it and you did harvest it. There's also this recognition that what you have came from God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And therefore you have a responsibility to the people that God loves.
Yeah.
And providing for
Probably
them out
easier
of
to
God's
hear this
blessing.
before they entered into the land. Like,
that's true.
Oh yeah, I'm going to get this gift.
Right.
And this is how I need to be a steward of this gift.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because Moses' main concern in Deuteronomy is that, I always say to the students, that Israel's going to wake up on third base and think they hit a triple.
Yeah.
That he says in Deuteronomy 6, right? You're going to get in this land with vineyards you didn't plant and cities you didn't build and cisterns you didn't dig, and you're going to.
But I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're going to think that you earned it.
More on that in the Deuteronomistic history.
Right. So don't do that. Don't forget. Yeah. Don't forget the Lord your God.
Did that happen?
It did. Spoiler alert. Yeah, Israel's a problem when it happens. Believe it or not, people are selfish. Yeah, I know. Newsflash. And we tend to think of these things as ours and not God's. And God's point is, I'm trusting you with them to show my character. And if you don't,
presupposes that mindset.
It does.
Bearing a grudge, selfish.
Right.
Exploit. How can I work these angles?
Yeah. Don't do that.
And mean too.
That's not mean.
Hey, don't put things. Just to stumble in front of the blind. It's like, man, there's a whole spectrum of people.
Quit moving the furniture. Yeah. That's not nice.
Okay. Yeah. I've had neighbors like that. Oh, man.
So, this.
Well, and it's down to, if you look at 18, because I brought in a book. You're kidding me about the fact that I was teaching a class on Leviticus.
I still didn't believe any church was actually studying Leviticus.
This is a very good book on Leviticus. We were studying this for Sunday school, and I was getting kidded about it in an earlier podcast. But it gets into, in 18, I think, if this is the correct reading, it's talking about your heart and your mindset, bearing a grudge. It's like, I'm not doing anything about it. But it's like, forget, but I will never forget, My grudges have handles, I carry them with me. This just says you can't do that.
Right.
That's not in keeping with God's nature and God's people reflecting God's nature. So it's hardly an external, rigid, abstract system that's like, this is where the rubber meets the road.
All those laws in Leviticus that don't apply today.
Those aren't for now.
Those aren't for now. No, kind of. Yeah, sorry. This is what God has always expected of people.
Yeah,
that they actually look like God.
Yeah,
and then what to do when you don't? I guess.
And what to do when you don't? Yeah,
yeah, you're not gonna.
Get there. Well, and beyond that, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And of course, you'll go further than that in the Sermon on the Mount, right?
Right. Because your neighbor gets big.
Your neighbor might be your enemy. Your neighbor might be occupying your land.
That's, yeah.
Yikes. Yes, that's controversial. I know we're in favor of Leviticus 19.
We are.
But I'm going to go out on a ledge. We're going to get some pushback about this, but we're going to take a stand. It's good stuff.
About trying to be holy because God is holy.
Yeah.
It's radical stuff.
Wow, this is not
And
new.
what holiness looks like. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Holiness looks like taking care of the people who can't take care of themselves. That's what holiness looks like. It's not these abstract rules and principles. And it's like when we were talking about the word righteousness and justice in the New Testament, right?
Yeah.
It's the same idea in Greek. Well, it's the same in many ways here too. Righteousness here is looking out for the poor, right? I mean, that's what holiness is here.
Yeah.
Taking care of the people who can't take care of themselves.
Yeah, we spent about a month. No, we spent like 3 weeks on Leviticus 19 in my Sunday school class. I was like, I'm amazed at how, once you really begin to think about this, how relevant and why Jesus would go there to that question. Where's the heart? What is the greatest commandment? It's like, wow, there's that kind of the pinnacle of this chapter, but then there's the surrounding text that really does unpack that.
And joining that, as Jesus does, with loving God, which is, Jesus, that's a brilliant move, Jesus. Well played, sir.
Oh, yes.
No, Deuteronomy 6:4, love God with everything that you are, which is the same as loving your neighbor as yourself. That's just, making it explicit like that, I think is just so amazing. And thinking in terms of the way in which you love neighbor, that's the way you love God. You want to love God, then you love neighbor. That's how you do that.
Yeah.
Do it to the least of these.
Yeah, in case we didn't get that from the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Those are connected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Nice.
Great. Ready to do Psalm 119?
I'm just going to reflect on Leviticus.
We're going to sit here quietly. Take a moment. We can some directed meditation, I guess.
Center ourselves. And
they could probably pause the podcast if they want to do that.
You know what? Let's do that. Let's go your route. That has a lot to commend it. Okay. Oh, so we move on to...
I just have to say real quick that when... I put my lectures on YouTube, of course, when I flipped my classroom. And I was studying how to do this in the early days and how you make a good video. And there was actually a video of the bad example of what you shouldn't do in a video.
Pausing.
Somebody in their video shows the question and then says, and I'm going to give you a few minutes to think on that, and walks out of frame and just lets the thing record while you're staring at the screen. And the point was, they could probably pause it if they need more time.
It would be worse if he stayed in screen.
That's true. If he just stands there awkwardly staring at you. No, he stepped off of screen, thankfully. But yeah,
checked his email.
So I'm just saying we probably don't need to go that route. We can let them pause the podcast if they need to. So.
Yeah, you can pause that. We're going to go on at this point.
Catch up with us in a minute.
To an OCD celebration of Torah. Part 2 or 3. We're at here.
We're in there.
Psalm, or otherwise known as Psalm 119. And we are looking at verses 33 through 40. And let me just read those for you.
Please.
Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I will observe it to the end. Give me understanding that I may keep your law and observe it with my whole heart. Lead me in the path of your commandments, for I delight in it. Turn my heart to your decrees and not to selfish gain. Turn my eyes from looking at vanities. Give me life in your ways. Confirm to your servant your promise, which is for those who fear you. Turn away the disgrace that I dread, for your ordinances are good. See, I have longed for your precepts. In your righteousness, give me life.
Yep.
It's nice. There's a lot there. There's a lot of revealing, turn away from the disgrace that I dread, It's like a Steely Dan song, okay? which
really?
Is, they said they write songs, they drop you down in the middle of someone's story.
This is about our third 70s musical reference in 3 podcasts, I think. Something like that.
I think they're all dying and they're telling us their story. We keep encountering them in like Rolling Stone or something. But they said the way they write songs is they drop you down in the middle of the story and you need to figure it out. So you got this thing, turn away the disgrace that I dread, verse 39. It's like, sorry, what?
Wait, which one what was that exactly?
What's going on? Yeah, tell me what's going on in your life.
It's funny. One of the things I always loved about Rich Mullins' music was he would do songs like that.
Oh.
I think about the song that he did called "The River," And the second verse is, maybe she could come to Wichita and we could borrow Beaker's bike and let the road wind tie our hair in knots and the fear and the freedom untangle the lies. And you're like, wait, what happened? What's going on in the story here? What happened? Who's lying to whom?
Previously
that's
on Rich Mullen's life. Give me a segue here.
But that's it.
Establishing shot.
Just jumped right into the thing.
Yeah.
Well, this is the Hey stanza. Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Daleth, Hey, is the fifth letter. So it's the fifth collection of 8 verses. An OCD celebration of Torah is not a bad title for this song. But again, it is the celebration of God's instruction and God's teaching. I know we've talked a lot about this, but that Torah is the way in which you live a life that flourishes. God's instruction is a way to a meaningful, good, flourishing life. And it's not legalism like we saw in Leviticus.
19.
It's not earning that. It's a way in which you demonstrate the character of God, which is the way in which you live a full and flourishing life. So a couple of things. Once again, fearing God is a way of talking about Torah observance. So once again, like I shared in a previous podcast, it's fearing the Lord is that recognition of position, that God is God and you are not God, and you'll defer to God's ways. I mean, the ways in which I've just spent a lot of time revisiting the Genesis 1-11 passages and the ways in which people want to turn away, whether it's in the garden where you don't want to accept God's definitions of good and evil, but want to do it for yourself, or even in the tower where let's make a name for ourselves. Let's define our character apart from God and not trust in God's way. So fearing God is just that acceptance that God's instruction is a good instruction. It's the way to
remember
to life
when we were doing that chapel where Professors Unleashed?
Yes.
And we were talking about people trying to look for God's will for my life.
Right. Yeah, God's will
so
for
maybe
my
it should
life.
be God's will in all caps and for my life. That made me think of that. Let's get the perspective on this.
Right.
It's not about your agenda. It's like you will flourish in pursuing these things.
In pursuing what God says. Yeah. Exactly. So, this is one of those where I don't know what new I can give you here. It's the center of the 5th book of the Psalms. It is, the central psalm in book 1 is a Torah psalm, and the central psalm in book 5 is a Torah psalm, and the beginning of the Psalms is a Torah psalm. So, the book of Psalms has, in part of its DNA, a celebration of God's living and God's working and God's instruction. So
So you're saying that's just all there is to it. We don't need to get into what does the 5th letter symbolize in Jewish mysticism or apocalyptic? You don't think there's something hidden here?
I'm sorry. No? I'm not one of the. This is one of those boring times, right? Where I'm sorry, doing what God says will give you a flourishing life.
Eat your vegetables.
Yeah, these are good vegetables, though. This is
yummy.
Hard work, celebratory kind of thing. So
it's like. Sometimes I get a big glass of water and I realize, man, I must not have been drinking water. Man, this is good. I'm loving this stuff. This is water.
Other people know about this water thing?
Was it the drink that made God famous?
Yes, that's what a friend of mine always said.
It's like, oh, this apple. These apples, man. You could really sell these. These are great. Juicy and crispy at the same time.
But they're Honey Crisps, sure, right? That's the platonic ideal of apple, the Honey Crisps.
Right, yeah.
But, this is just a celebration of desire for, and in an ordered song, who God is and what God is. So,
good stuff.
Yeah, I don't. Not a lot to say there.
How long is Psalm 118?
176 verses.
We'll take little bites here.
Yeah. I'd like to find some new. We could talk more about how the heart is decision making, right? So we're trying to observe it the way in which we make our decisions. It's not any kind of internalized spiritual kind of thing. Turn my heart to your decrees. In other words, make my decision making following what you say.
Well, it's just interesting, the litany of negative things that you avoid. Turn my eyes away from looking at vanities. This prevents me from being disgraced. It's like, it doesn't seem too cool or new or the latest thing or sexy, but it's like, here's what you're going to avoid by going down this path. All these things that really make for a bad life.
Vanity's meaningless the way that's often translated, right? Turn my eye away from meaningless things is and turn it to your way of living, which is meaningful, which kind of gets us back to Leviticus again.
Yeah.
What is meaningful for
It's
God?
meaningful to read this in conjunction with Leviticus. I mean, it does work.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, because that's the kind of Torah we're talking about here,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's people tend to think of don't eat pork, but
ham sandwiches.
No ham sandwiches. Following God's law. I'm not eating ham sandwiches or
what's the heart of the law?
Bacon
What's
cheeseburgers.
the greatest commandment? No ham sandwiches.
Yeah, that's right. And that's not what they're thinking of. And even I would argue that those dietary restrictions likely were ways in which to reflect identity and holiness in that culture that we have since lost in a lot of ways.
Sure.
So,
yeah. All right, we're turning the page.
Yeah, let's turn the page. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 3, 10 through 11, and 16 to 23. So the last thing we want to do is read verses 12 to 15, apparently. Is that a problem?
Whatever you do, don't go there.
We'll look at verse 10. According to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation and someone else is building on it. Each builder must choose with care how to build on it. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one that has been laid. That foundation is Jesus Christ. Do you not know you are God's temple and that God's Spirit dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For God's temple is holy and you are that temple. Do not deceive yourselves. If you think you are wise in this age, you should become fools that you may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it's written, he catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. So let no one boast about human leaders, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or the present or the future, all belong to you. And you belong to Christ, and Christ belongs to God.
All right. That's pretty inclusive there. Yeah.
I was just thinking of Paul's desire when he puts things together with or, life or death or angels or demons in Romans 8. And here it's Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death. Okay. He likes that stringing things together.
He's up in his game rhetorically. He's definitely going, lifting it to a poetic level.
What are we missing in 12 to 15?
Well, I knew inevitably that would come up. So since I didn't read it, I've got my Bible here. Let's see.
So you're asking your audience to believe you have a Bible.
Yes.
Within.
Here's what we didn't read. Now, if any man builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each man's work will become evident, for the day will show it, because it is to be revealed with fire. And the fire itself will test the quality of each man's work. If any man's work which he has built on it remains, he will receive a reward. If any man's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, but he himself will be saved, yet so as through fire. So, there's a
I got you.
Pretty harsh imagery about that we don't see the quality of things perhaps right now, and that will be a day that when that's revealed.
When God will reveal the quality.
Testing comes. So he's been talking about, in this chapter, he's been talking about, he moves from agriculture, from sowing into seal, from farming to architectural metaphors, and then you realize that the building is a temple. And so, whereas it's been kind of like we're all someone plants and someone reaps.
Let me stop real quick and ask a question, because I'm an American.
Okay.
And in verse 16,
and it's my right as an American.
It's verse 16.
Stop you right there, buddy.
I need to know that you are God's temple. Is that y'all?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. See, because my first reading of that was
don't smoke cigarettes.
As an exactly. As an American individualist, I am God's temple. No, we are God's temple. Okay, so this is the Corinthian church.
Typically,
y'all.
Yeah. Or nearly every time he talks
in Chicago,
is
you guys.
Plural. You guys.
You guys are God's temple.
Yeah.
And God's Spirit dwells in you guys.
Wow, that's interesting with that accent.
This is Pat from Joliet. Why don't we talk more Aki on this podcast?
I did the Wisconsin thing.
I can't do that one. Yeah. I'm much better at Southern accents.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry. So that's what I was checking.
Plural.
It is plural.
It is probably, the default would be, this is probably plural. And our go-to is, this is for me.
Right.
This is for me.
Right.
Although, I think in chapter 6, he does talk about individuals' bodies being the temple.
Okay.
Okay, when it's talking about individual issues and being joined to a prostitute or something like that.
Gotcha.
But typically it's a y'all or all y'all in some parts of the country to really know it's plural. And yeah, this is still talking about the community. He had been talking about a bit more egalitarian, like, hey, we're all co-workers. But there's kind of a shift here from, one person lays the foundation and then other people build on it. But then it's kind of about, and you can't lay any other foundation. Oh, and did I mention I laid the foundation, as a master builder? That's, this is a move from kind of equality to superiority in a sense. If you see what he's really doing, saying, who started this church, by the way?
Right, right.
But that's not his point. You could hear it that way. But there is a slightly different shift in tone here, because there are people who've come in and built upon that foundation. And as we read from the verses that were left out, there's some question as to the quality of the materials or whether they're following the code and what kind of shoddy work
church
is being
not
done.
Being built up to code.
Yeah. So stubble and hay, are we supposed to be building with this? It's like kind of flammable.
I got some paper towels.
Yeah. There's a dry season and fire hazard here. Okay. So, you can't lay any foundation than the other one that has been laid. That foundation is Jesus Christ. And do you know that you are God's temple? And that would be the term for the inner shrine of the temple. So there's the temple complex, and then there's the temple building, and then there's, different...
The holiest place.
The holiest place within that wherein God dwells. So that is the naos, the language there for the inner Holy of Holies.
That's a Greek word we just slipped into.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
No, I just word I made up. It's a mnemonic device. I can remember.
Interesting.
Things. Yeah. It's a Greek word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And if anyone destroys God's temple, who said anything about destroying God's temple? All right. Yeah.
Okay. So he's when he's saying this, he's saying that you guys are the most holy place, right? You are the most holy place of God's dwelling.
Because of God's dwelling. You are a holy place.
Yeah. Yes, I want to get that in the right order. Sure. Because of God's dwelling, you are a holy place.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I'm sorry.
God dwells in our midst,
Which was the issue in Leviticus, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the problem in Leviticus is that when you have the holy God living in your midst, that's a problem if you're not a holy people. And so the safeguards of camping and diet and all of that was to ensure you maintained holiness so that you wouldn't come into problems when you came into contact with this holy God.
Yeah, right.
And so I imagine that's some of the same thinking that's going on back here.
Oh, and when is this holy person coming? He's here now.
Yeah, that's right.
So get your act together.
He's among you.
Yeah. That's the reality of the New Testament. Sometimes it's very easy for us to slip into different ways of reading the Bible or the New Testament in general. That's backwards. Bible in general or the New Testament. I'm thinking about the classes I teach. From a scientific, a modern view, it's like we're trying to prove that these things happen, and that's why we're writing the way we write the Gospels and things in the New Testament. It's like probably the fact that people, the closer to the reality is something like this, that people have been called in a community, and they're finding that this reality of God living in their midst, the resurrected Christ, is living and making real the God of all creation. It's like you're having to how do I then think about these things, and how do I make sense of the story of Jesus, and how do we talk about this? They're starting with a lived reality that they're experiencing life through God's Spirit, and they're trying to catch up with everything else, both in how they get their life together and also how you talk about, what did it mean for Jesus to come and minister and lay down his life and die and be raised. I guess I'm slipping a little bit into the Gospels, how sometimes people read the Gospels. These are proofs that Jesus, could do miracles and things like that. It's like, no, this is more about this. Wow, how do we understand the fact that we live in God's presence, and what does that mean, and how do we think about that? So,
Gotcha.
That's relevant for me. I don't know if that's relevant for anyone else. A little digression there. He's going to pull in his cul-de-sac for a minute, mentally. Okay, moving on.
I do think it's funny that how he gets ahead of the people that are going to argue with him. Right? Well, if you think you're smart, then it turns out you're not. So it's really going to be hard to
has a conversation with him.
Make your point. There. So if you think you're wise in this age, probably should be stupid.
Yeah. So. And of course, he's been there. That's where he started.
Right.
He's talking about the things that you think are wise are really foolishness, and vice versa. For the wisdom of the world is foolishness for God, with God, for it is written. And then a lot of, and I was going to look these up, I didn't, but he catches the wise in the craftiness. The Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, they are futile. These are quotes from the Old Testament. And I was thinking about this. We often talk about how authors of the New Testament use the Old Testament. This is kind of another analogy. You shared me. What did you share? You shared one.
Well, I didn't know that one was ready for the public internet.
You can think about whether you want to talk about it. I was thinking about sampling, like certain songs sample other songs.
Oh, okay.
They use it for their own purpose. You know? And you can't use that much, or else it's the same song and they get all the royalties. Okay?
Right.
Like Vanilla Ice, right? Okay. Ice Ice Baby. All the royalties went to. See, I'm in the 80s now.
Well, at least we're moving forward. Oh, see, for me, it's for those who are Ice Ice Baby living in an under pressure world. That's that's the problem.
Living under pressure. That's that
Queen.
Yeah. It's not a sample. It's the whole thing.
Back to the 70s.
Yeah.
Again.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that I shared with you last week was as I was having a text message conversation, and it was. Every now and then, to make my point, I dropped in these animated GIFs.
Oh, yeah.
And so, as we do now, right? You drop in. In fact, there's the setting there. And so, once it was a Princess Bride scene. You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. Yeah. Once was a Doctor Who moment. Once was these other things. And I started sitting here thinking, that is very much the way the New Testament uses Scripture as these, and this is great because people are hearing us. So we're using these animated GIFs. That's what we're doing. It really is, because there's no regard for original context. Because there's at no point was that's not what the Princess Bride is about, right? Yeah. That's not what The Office is about. That's not what all these animated GIFs are about. But I'm using them to support my point. And using elements from popular culture, demonstrating my familiarity with them,
right?
And how saturated I am in this world, and able to drop it in to make my points as I go. Yeah, that's what they do with Scripture.
Now, I think popular culture is a good analogy, because we are saturated with popular culture, and they were saturated with Scripture. That was the heart of their culture, and their education, their legal system.
We regard in our social conversations people who can make the right popular culture reference at the right time, right? I mean, if someone's making a joke,
right,
and you draw on something that this circle is familiar with in a way in just the right moment that it makes the joke even funnier. Then you're like, wow, Mike's
was
hysterical.
Good.
Well done.
Good.
Well done. And it doesn't mean I can't use that reference someplace else in some other context. And it doesn't mean, but it's that kind of dropping these. So using these. So I'm here thinking, wow, animated GIFs, memes. This is what the Bible's like. I said, there's no way I can tell people this. There's no way I can tell people the New Testament is like, but you're the only, but since no one's really listening, I feel like we're pretty safe.
I think we should go into this thinking that nobody's listening. Just talk about what we really talk about. But it's drawing from the cultural capital and use it as a catalyst in another context, and something happens if you do it right.
Yeah.
But no one says, "Oh, that's what that movie was about."
Right.
No one ever goes there. It's like, "Oh, that's what that book was about."
Yeah, we don't even think about that.
No,
that
you
way.
think about the present context. Oh, that's a nice way to make a point of what you're saying now.
Right.
You're not exegeting that movie for me. You're not doing literary criticism on that book.
Right.
So
So that's. Yeah,
we're just going to work out our own issues here for a few minutes.
So that's what. I tried to say all that in a text message to you, and you got.
And
back.
I didn't understand.
I have no idea what's going on. We'll have to talk about that.
I have no idea what this beautiful illustration is you're using.
It's like, oh my gosh, I just had this wonderful epiphany, and you didn't get it. So I'm glad that we had this chance to talk. Unfortunately, it's into the microphone.
Yeah.
So
all right,
we'll see if anybody else agrees with it.
Well, we're catching up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway. Yeah, it's interesting. The one little factoid before we leave off Corinthians would be that he's talking about foundation, and some people wonder if, he's bringing Cephas in, which his name means rock, and there's this tradition, of course, it's only in Matthew, but on this rock I'll build my church. Right. Now, whether they knew that or not, or whether
the Corinthian church is aware of the Peter story,
Peter saying about establishing his church on
because this
rock
book is going to predate the gospel.
Yeah, it's going to predate that, but not Jesus saying that.
Right.
So whether
the Jesus tradition had gotten there.
Yeah, or did in fact Peter have an influence on
in the Corinthian
church?
That's a good question.
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure.
I do think it's neat because you were talking about at the beginning that the skilled master, I laid the foundation.
Yeah.
So he kind of moves to that, and then he finishes with this section with, so don't boast about leaders.
Yeah,
right? So
yeah. Oh, did I boast? Oh,
yeah.
Not to mention that I'm
the one who laid this foundation, but don't start caring
but
about that
but
kind of
be
thing.
like
I mean, if
me,
you're gonna care about that thing, remember I did this, but don't care about that.
But be like me and don't mention it.
Right.
That I founded the church.
Because that's not important.
Well, it's funny. As a founder of the church, you care about the church.
Of course you do. Yes.
And you want to remind them of that. That I have your best interests here. Right. And it could be heard as braggadocio, if it get heard that way. A lot of times it's how you encounter Paul is the presuppositions you take in, It just what are you thinking about Paul when you start reading him?
Right.
And it's hard to read him.
So if you think of him as a misogynist, everything you read is going to seem misogynistic.
Right,
or if you think of him as, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And I think, and of course, they use very different rhetoric that we would find over the top, and you're crossing too many boundaries, and you need to back off a little bit, and that's just norm. That's the norm.
Right.
If we're going to calibrate, it's probably not that far off from his culture. This is a
Right.
very in-your-face culture. It's like, no, we need to work this out.
Right.
It's like, no, we're not going to have this argument. No, we need to because we're in a relationship. So yeah, he's not going to let it go. So yeah, he's a robust personality. I do enjoy encountering him, even though I don't spend a lot of time in teaching him.
Well, you want to look at Matthew?
I don't think we have time for Matthew. Is there anything here like really, really important?
Nah. All right, let's look at Matthew. Matthew chapter 5, verses 38 through 48. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. You're right. We don't have time to cover this.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to sue you
It's an hour podcast.
and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you. Don't refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends the rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? Those lousy
tax collectors.
And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what more are you doing than others? Do not even Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect.
Wow. That's hard for us to hear perfect language.
Setting the bar kind of high there.
Yeah, perfect. I can't see the bar from here.
Be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think complete is a better term.
I think it was Wesley who said that, people objected to this, who's part of the Holy Industry. He said that he actually thought perfection was something we could attain because Jesus wouldn't tell us to do something we couldn't do.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So,
although that's a freighted term in our culture.
It is.
Right.
And I like what I think it was St. John Chrysostom said about perfection, and that perfection is to be able to love without limits. That's perfection. Loving without limits. I thought that was a nice
definition. That can be unattainable too if you put it that way. Limitless love.
Yes.
But if you look at it in context, it means you have the same measurement for your friends that you do for your enemies.
Yes.
Both. Like limitless love is, to me, I react like, oh, that sounds really hard. But to love both your friends and your enemies the same. Both sounds like, two things. I could do that.
I can't do infinite things, but I can do 2 things.
I can think about what I'm doing and am I applying the golden rule? Would this be fair if someone did this to me? That's doable.
Yeah.
That's doable. Hopefully I'm doing that. And I want to hold other people to that, to that standard.
Hold on a second here. You're trying to tell me that this passage of Scripture is applicable to our lives?
No.
And attainable?
No.
Okay, good. Because I remember we had a whole podcast on how not to apply the Bible to our lives.
Yeah, that was recent.
That was a recent one. I think we need to...
What did we say there? How do you do that? I forget.
Yeah.
There are strategies, right?
Yeah,
it's just for a little time when Jesus was talking.
Right.
Not really meant...
Or maybe love your enemies and so tough love. There's tough love out there, Sometimes you just gotta be tough.
Kill them.
No, teach him. That's a way to love them.
Go see God. Tough love.
And yet, I don't feel like that's what Jesus is saying here.
Yeah, no, there's lots of strategies not to read it that way. And this certainly, this is one of them. One of the areas where you hear the they really employ these strategies. Like, well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. This is obviously not something we actually
not
do.
applicable. It's not something we can actually do.
This is one of even if you get this far in the first chapter of the Sermon on the Mount, this is some rough sledding. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. Well, that's usually where
we're out
usually
now.
one of the examples. Oh, you really think you're just going to let
Jesus
people
can't
do that?
possibly mean that.
Yeah. If anyone wants to take your coat and your cloak as well, or if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. So, does Jesus really expect us to do that? You know what's interesting is to keep reading this narrative that it's in and think, let's see, was anyone struck on the cheek?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Was anyone stripped of their clothing? Was anyone required to carry something by Roman soldiers? Is there anything like that later in this story?
I haven't gotten to the end yet. So
anyone humiliated? Spoiler alert. Yes, that's coming. Which is really interesting. I don't think I've ever read it that way. That's realize, oh, this is in a context where all that cross stuff actually does relate to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've said many times when people have, I've had a commitment to nonviolence now for quite some time. And after reading Yoder in grad school, and people are like, well, why? It's like, I don't want to be. I don't want to be committed to not because I'm naturally predisposed to do this. No,
I need to.
I'm committed to nonviolence because it's what Jesus said to do, and it's what Jesus did. If you can give me some strategy to set aside what Jesus did and what Jesus said, I'm happy.
That would greatly simplify.
It would make life so much easier because I want to come after you when you hurt me. Of course.
Yeah.
So that's
the given.
This is hard.
Yeah, like Leviticus, the presupposition is there's going to be occasions in living next to your neighbor you're going to want to bear a grudge and vengeance and do
someone's
this
going to
kind
hit you,
of nasty stuff to them. Oh yeah, you can't do that. Yeah. So I can remember here on campus, wherever we are, the beginning of the Iraq War, and there were some student forums, and went on for a couple nights actually. And there was a whole, it was well represented, well attended, kind of thing you would want to happen on a university campus. Yeah. Lots of faculty, lots of students, interesting dialogue as they're ramping up to go to war. And I thought, well, gosh, there's just so much you could say. There's just so much you could say in that context.
We should say you come from a Brethren church.
I come from one of the historic peace churches. I thought, there's so much for me as one who chases, goes down rabbit holes and takes detours that I kind of need a strategy. So all I'm going to do is come in and have a few verses that I'm going to quote. And I'm not going to expound. I'm just going to say them. And so when my turn ever came up, I would give something like this, or how this is not just found here, but it's throughout.
Sure. Not
just the New Testament, but as we've just read in Leviticus 19, it's the heart of the Old Testament as well. And there was a emeritus professor of philosophy, and every time I kept going to say, and the cross actually can be understood as an example for the Christian life. This was shocking. And
wait a minute, this was a shocking point.
Well, in the context of war, it's not what people are thinking about.
Yeah.
Inevitability in your country's ramping up to go into another country. And one of the times he said, I was reading something about Jesus' crucifixion and how it related to his teaching. And he started to say, this person started to say, well, that's not for, he was going to say, that's not for us. I said, it's hard to say that, isn't it? Isn't it really hard to say what we actually think all the time? that Jesus stuff at the end of the story, that's not for us. Like, there's a long tradition of that not being read for us.
Right.
That's just something he did for us.
Even though Jesus himself said, if you want to be a disciple, you have to take up your own
it's
cross
something he did for
me.
us. It's not something he's modeling. I think that's not a good reading of the gospel.
I would have to agree as an Old Testament person. that is not a good reading of the gospel.
That would not be my chosen. I would, as I said, I would greatly simplify things if that weren't the case. But in fact, clearly, as Matthew relates the trial and beating and crucifixion of Jesus, it's exactly along these lines that Jesus is going to live this out. So that gotta wrestle with this differently. Yeah,
that's not helpful.
So I think a little bit easier language is loving your neighbor, and you can't hate your enemy. The perfection or completeness of God is that He treats good people and evil people the same.
Yeah.
Which probably easier for him because we're all evil.
He's got a different perspective on that there.
Yeah. But the thing is, God's character is such, it doesn't change depending on the character of the other person.
Mm-hmm. God's response.
God is complete and perfect. And so God is going to, so perfection in terms of completeness, like he brings the rain and the sunshine to the good and to the evil. His character doesn't change because of a faulty character in others. And so ours, to be complete, to be like our Father in heaven, is to be representing that same character to both. Mm-hmm. That seems attainable. I mean, not attainable, but
through God
for.
In community,
Words
it is
like
possible.
Perfection and limitless, those things, like why even try?
Okay.
But to words like both, yeah, act this way toward good people and good neighbors and bad neighbors. Okay, That's more like, okay, that's something I can work on, and I can't do it alone. I can do it in a community that's empowered by God's Spirit and is leaning on each other and is renewed in this ongoing struggle to live this kind of way.
Are there any specific cultural things that help us understand suing you and taking your coat and forcing you to go 1 mile? I mean, is there anything there that? Is this a Roman issue, forcing you to go 1 mile?
I don't know about the suing and taking your coat, because there's legislation against that in Leviticus. I don't think that's a Jewish thing, but there's definitely a Roman thing to just conscript you and have you do things for them and carry their stuff. They could do that anytime they wanted. So. And that's kind of a harassment sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of a bullying issue.
Yeah. And so to go the extra mile is to kind of subvert that. It's like they're not really taking away your freedom if you're freely choosing to do
actually
it.
Submitting.
It's like that Far Side commercial, not a cartoon where this guy's in hell and he's like moving coals from one.
Right, he's like whistling as he goes.
We're not getting through to this guy.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, that's something subversive about that. So,
well, and that's that picture of submission then, right? That picture that you get in Ephesians of speaking to the people who are in traditional places of exploitation to submit, and I mean also to the people in power to submit as well, but that recognition of, they're not forcing you if you are surrendering in that way.
It's Jesus, as he modeled this, was not going along with the status quo, just submitting to it and having a strategy to endure. No, he was overturning that in submitting to it.
Yeah.
Some people say, well, striking on the cheek, that's not violence.
Where? Where is that not violence?
That's a simple,
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's, I'm not a New Testament guy. I'll confess that off the bat. But that strikes me as violence.
There's a Mike
someone.
Tyson quote about like people's strategies for
everyone has a plan till you get hit in the mouth.
Yeah. Everyone has a plan till you get hit in the mouth. It's like, that's pretty violent. Okay?
Yeah.
But it is also symbolically attacking your honor.
That's true.
So it's not, I think it's both. And so we say it's not really an attack, but there are people in prison for committing murder because someone dishonored them and humiliated them.
Sure.
People you would never think are violent, and someone has just disgraced them or humiliated them, and they've just responded in a way that there's no way they saw that coming.
Right.
So in terms of which is more violent, just disgracing, with the ultimate disgrace, just humiliation. Either way.
Yeah.
I mean, they think it's both here. It was the beginning of a process of a Roman crucifixion for Jesus, and this isn't torture; it's humiliation. It's a process. More than anything, it's a way to destroy you socially in status.
Right.
It involves physical pain and torture,
but
that's not its primary. They had other ways for you to actually feel more torture. This is something I've learned from our colleagues in history. It's like this is about destroying you socially and also sending a message to everyone else.
Right, that's the point.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the point of crucifixion is it's a political statement.
Yeah.
You don't want to do whatever these people did to do this. And so they have to humiliate this person to such a degree that it's a social deterrent so they can maintain
Yeah.
The Pax Romana.
So this isn't a question of is this physical violence or is this some sort of social affront? It's both.
Okay.
It's both. And I wouldn't minimize social affront because I think we feel that almost more than physical wounds heal quicker than those other wounds,
Mm-hmm.
And probably unforeseen reactions. We may react in unexpected ways if people attack us physically, but we would be shocked at how we respond when we're humiliated or shamed. Yeah.
I'm still reeling about the way you read verse 45. I'm not going to lie. That God makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous, because I think for years I have heard that passage as some sort of statement of it's the problem of evil, right? Well, look, God blesses the wicked, and God makes it rain on the righteous, and so that's the way God is. He's just inscrutable,
and
so
if I were, I wouldn't do it that way.
Kind of kooky. But your reading of that didn't read it that way at all, and you're making a statement that. And it seems to fit the context better. So now I have to wrestle with the fact that your reading that I've never heard fits the context better than my reading that I've always heard.
Fits this context.
Fits the context of the passage, yes.
Yeah.
That statement is a statement that God's wanting you not to change your behavior with regard to who you're standing in front of. Mm-hmm. And because God doesn't.
Right.
God still makes the sun shine.
Eclipse this morning so the sun doesn't shine on the evil.
Right. And I always read this as sun is positive and rain is negative, but not necessarily here. Mm-hmm. Now it's life happening, right? I mean, it's blessings, it's life. The world works for them the same way as it does for you.
Yeah.
I don't treat them different.
Right.
I don't hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like him to hurt them, but he doesn't do that. And so...
I thought you said vengeance was yours, Lord.
Yeah, really.
When are we going to get to that part?
Step on the mean parts, please.
Yeah.
So that I'm sorry, you blew me away with that one. Huh. So I've tried to stay engaged since then, but I've been sort of struggling.
That's because you got all that baggage from having read the Old Testament.
Well, that's true.
That's the stuff you carry around.
Just literally 15 minutes before this podcast begins, I was God's PR man once again, because someone was in a Bible study last night, and the Old Testament is just mean. He's just so mean. I don't want to read the Old Testament. He's just so mean. And so I have to go, I promise you that there's stuff that's getting in the way that makes it look like that. Yeah. I understand, but he's not. He's still Jesus. It's still the same character, and that's fully revealed in Christ. But it's still, there's work to do for folks. It's easier a little bit when it's this explicit. It's a little bit, there's not that. It's not as opaque.
And Leviticus 19 is not very far from
this. You're exactly right.
Not very
That's true.
far.
You're exactly right.
If you tease out the implications. And I think that Jesus is showing, here's what the heart of that is. And let me just tell you what the heart of the heart is really saying. If you understand this correctly,
Yeah.
And there's two places in the Sermon on the Mount where it says you're going to be reflect God's character or be called, children of God, and that is peacemakers. And in this context, okay, these are things that are more associated with reflecting God's character and being a true example of your Father in heaven, so that you may be, verse 45, children of your Father in heaven. Yeah. Now, there's a lot of beatitudes or blessings, and the blessed are you if you do this, but those are the two that kind of are highlighted for this is really God's character. He makes peace, and he doesn't respond in this fashion, and he's complete, and he's good to all.
He makes peace in the sense of shalom. He makes peace in the sense of flourishing. He makes peace in the sense of, not just makes peace in the sense of people aren't fighting.
Right.
He makes peace in the sense of there is human flourishing here, completeness, wholeness. Right. Well, you fully function as a human being as you were created to.
Mm-hmm. And he doesn't, eliminate those people who are disrupting the peace. Okay.
No, he lets that's not how he makes shine on them and the rain fall.
Let's get this out of the way so we can have some shalom. It's like, no, let's act in that shalom sort of character towards those people,
whether they are evil or good.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just
great.
Terrible.
I know. It's great. I can't believe it.
This is never going to catch on.
Yeah. And then putting this right at the beginning of the gospel. It's like, I don't know why it caught on, and then they put it at the beginning of the New Testament. I don't know. I'm not in charge. I'm not saying I should be in charge. I'm just saying. Question it.
That's a marketing mistake. I think we're gonna
save that. I'd couch that till later.
Yeah, in the fine print, right? Yeah, that's in the end user license agreement nobody reads. Right? Yeah. By the way, you agreed to no.
Even Jesus does that in Revelation. You need to overcome like I overcame. It's like, okay, I volunteer for that. What is overcoming?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
crucifixion.
this stuff.
Dang.
This cross stuff. Gotcha again.
See, because this is a John 6 moment, right? I go away sad. That's what happens here. The disciples went away sad. Many who followed him. That's because, really?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can see why. Thousands and thousands of people left him.
That's hard.
Provocateur.
Well, dang.
I will sigh collectively. Gets better.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't again.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'm sure this is all good for our good.
Well, I'm very grateful for a new reading of that verse. I'm going to have to chew on that one for a while. I'm very grateful for that. That one's going to hurt my brain. So.
Yeah, there's all these things that keep telling us we need to read this and take it seriously and actually try to live it out. It's like, I don't see any escape clauses.
Really? There's no other, is there a footnote or something?
I don't see it. Maybe we can find a manuscript where it's
can find footnotes.
Psych.
Just kidding. Is that crazy or what?
But seriously.
Oh, well, Jesus, huh? Ruining the curve for us for 2,000 years.
I mean, there is all of church history. There's most of church history that kind of gives a pass.
That's true. We haven't taken it seriously.
Lean on that.
Yeah, that's. I don't know that helps us.
Yeah,
no, that's probably a problem.
All right.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope that your mind has been blown as much as mine. I don't know. Maybe I don't hope that for you, but I hope that you've had a good time listening to us today and found meaning in it.
Thank you for hanging out with us while we process our own issues here.
Absolutely.
As teachers and as followers.
Blessings.
Blessings.